The topic is slavery and the civil rights movement, and of course we're talking to Alana McLaughlin, who has given us some information in reference to the beginning of slavery and some of the things that were generally associated with that institution, as well as the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution that ended slavery, gave African citizenship rights and the right to vote. But she's now talking about some of the problems, some of the people who opposed African suffrage, freedom, and etc. And I think it was led primarily by an organization called the NAACP. Let's talk about the NAACP and some of the things that were associated with that organization trying to deal with civil rights of Africans.
Well, one of the reasons why the NAACP really popped up was the Emmett Till case. Emmett Till reportedly flirted with a white woman in her store, and she went home and told her husband. So the husband got his stepbrother, and they went and kidnapped Emmett Till, which is one reason they went to jail. Then they kidnapped him, they gouged out his eyes, they gun whipped him, beat him, hung him. Then they tied a lamp around his neck. Then they threw him into the Mississippi River. And how could somebody do that to a little boy? He was 14, so he had his whole life to live, but he got it taken away by racism.
But now this also indicated that the NAACP was concerned about that. And what was the NAACP's reaction to what had happened to Emmett Till?
Well, the NAACP had many protests, said that the governor of Mississippi should have gotten more justice for Emmett Till, because they immediately didn't go to jail just because of the case. So the NAACP, they started saying that they support Miss Till, Emmett's mother and father, because how hard can it, I imagine it's very hard seeing your child in an open casket with basically no eyes, no face, bruised lips, gun whipped. And at Till's funeral, his mother kept his casket open, no matter how gruesome it looked. She kept the casket open. And you know why? To show the world how evil those men were, and how evil the Ku Klux Klan and what people back then could be, to show how evil that was.
Now, all of this evil and all of the violence really came at another stage in the 1960s with the civil rights movement led primarily by Dr. Martin Luther King. How did Dr. Martin Luther King lead this movement? Movement towards civil rights.
Well, Martin Luther King was born on January the 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, which is where his father was a preacher. So he grew up with the thought that he wanted to stop all this segregation, and he has a famous speech, which is the I Have a Dream speech. And in that speech he's saying, I have a dream that one day Caucasian people and Muslim and African and Indian will all come together and say I love you to one another, because that's the kind of world that the Lord wanted us to have. Because he didn't want all this violence. He didn't want all the Emmett Till murders and the Birmingham bombs. He didn't want all that. He didn't want all those terrorists. He wanted somebody to love. He wanted everybody to love each other.
But one of the things about this is, though, even though Dr. Martin Luther King wanted all of this love, what happened to Dr. King himself?
Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated because of his beliefs. He was assassinated because he thought that people should love each other. But the man that shot him, I guess he thought different thoughts, because if you shot a peacemaker, it would take a really cold heart to shoot somebody who is trying to make your life better, trying to help you, and you just have the nerve to assassinate him.
Why did Miss King, you often speak about Coretta Scott King. She was a very courageous woman, you say often.
Coretta Scott King was Martin Luther King's wife, and sometimes when he couldn't make it to his speeches, she'd speak for him, and they had the same beliefs. And Coretta Scott King was very deeply hurt by her husband's assassination, and it really took a toll on her. I hear that like she was just like kind of very sad after that, and I know how it feels having your husband, a peacemaker, who's trying to better their life and his children's life, and everybody else's lives can die. The one person who brought the light to the world dead.
And so, in a real sense, Alana, you're saying that slavery came to an end. Africans were given the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendments to the Constitution. There was some opposition on the part of the Ku Klux Klan. I think you've identified that as an important organization. And in spite of that, the Civil War gave the Africans the civil rights, and in a real sense, the civil rights movement led by Dr. King, even though he gave his life in order to push
better
forward better people's lives. Nevertheless, he himself lost his own life. Now, looking at this whole period, Lana, that you talked about, what can you say to people who are 9 and 10 years old today in reference to how they ought to celebrate and how they ought to become literate in reference to some of the things that we're talking about? Even though you didn't give us everything that you wanted to give us, let's speak to that as an issue this morning. That is, what can young children do in order to be more successful in terms of bringing people together?
It's very sad when I go to school and then on Monday and I was church and he was like, oh, I don't go to church, my parents still go to church. I was like, well, do you want to go to church? She was like, yeah, but my parents don't go to church. Well, that doesn't mean that you can't go to church. I mean, you can ask somebody to take you to church. They should be involved in the church, and they should try to help people. Like, start a bullying group if that's what you want to do. If you want to help people like that, then you can certainly do that. Or you can just ask your teacher, can I talk to some of the students who have been bullied, and can I talk to them and let them know that they have somebody to talk to, because I know what they're going through. You could just do that. Any way you want to help out in your school, like you could join the Big Help with Nickelodeon, where they plant and they help save the earth. That's another way, because when you litter stuff, you are bullying. If you don't know it, you're bullying Mother Nature, because the nature is the way she breathes, and when you litter stuff, you're just dirtying the world. So you could even join the Big Help, go around the neighborhood, ask people do their grandsons or aunts or nieces need somebody to talk to, because I understand what they're going through. So those are some common ways that you could help. And you don't even have to leave state or anything. Or you don't even have to leave your block. Just walk down the street and go to your friend's house and ask, have you been bullied? Do you want somebody to talk to?
Well, Lana, in a real sense, when you talk to your peers in reference to some of these problems, one of the most important things I think that people are talking about now is literacy. Now, what would you say to them this morning in terms of what you've already demonstrated, that you've got a good reading ability and et cetera, but not all young children have that kind of ability. Say some words that would encourage them toward reading this morning.
Well, the only reason that you don't know how to read is that somebody was too lazy to teach you, and that they didn't want you to go to school, or you didn't set your mind to it. So if you set your mind to it, you can do anything you want. Dr. King set his mind to trying to help people's lives, and he did that. But his own life was taken because he did that. And I think he's in heaven, and he's smiling down at us because we're doing a better job with the world, and we're spreading his word, and we're trying to say that follow in his footsteps. Do the stuff like when he was assassinated, you could lead on his path and you could continue his path, because you know that he would want you to do that. And he'd want all you, he'd come to people's schools, he'd want you to know that you should be doing this for the world. You should be doing it for yourself. You should be doing it for the people that you love. And
Lana, over the last minute that we have here, also say some words to your upcoming 5th grade class that you're going to be. I think you moved from elementary school to the next levels. Make some statements over the last half minute in reference to that.
Well, on August 1st, I'm going to John Early Middle. I might join clubs, or I might start another bullying group or support group to help people, because I know that mainly in middle and high school, not so much in elementary school, but it still happens that children get bullied, and I know how terrible that must feel. So I could start another group, or I could just help people, and that's what I really want to set my mind to, and that's what I want to do.
Very good. Of course, let me thank you, Alana, for bringing by that excellent information and giving us some kind of roadmap as to how people might be able to go not only to celebrate the Civil War, but also to talk about bullying. Let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and
good morning.